I'll now call to order the special call meeting of the Pascagoula-Gautier School District Board of Trustees. Mr. Doffich, we have agenda before us. Are there any additions, corrections? Okay, doing that, please make note that all 5 board members are present. We need a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Motion to approve by Ms. Wilson.
Second.
Second by Mr. McNeil. Any discussion? All in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Opposed, same. Motion carried 5-0. Okay, Mr. Doffich, item 2A.
Request for approval of personnel resignations, recommendations, recommended resignations, recommendations, upgrades of licensed personnel, and resignations and recommendations of classified personnel on the attached pages to be accepted and approved. It recommended the Board of Trustees approve all items on the personnel resignations and recommendations agenda for June 26, 2019.
You've heard the superintendent's recommendation. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Johnson.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Irving. Any discussion on the item? Hearing none. All in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries 5-0. Item 2B.
Request for approval of the docket of claims for June 2019. Attaches the district docket of claims beginning with claim number 1832991 through 1833785 for the month of June 2019. It's recommended the Board of Trustees ratify the payment of claims as presented in the attached docket of claims.
You've heard the superintendent's recommendation. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Irving.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Johnson. Any discussion on the item?
I just have one question on the house demo next to Trent Lot. I know they didn't demo it; they just moved it. Does that affect what we paid them at all? I don't know what they invoiced
We
us
asked
for.
Kelly that question.
I don't. We provide.
Did we just say bid us on just getting rid of it, or are we actually paying them to demolish it and then they just move it? Does that affect the validity of what we paid them, is what I'm wondering.
The quote was the removal of...
Okay, yeah, that's what I was just wondering if it was kind of
one big piece or
vague.
one little
Right.
piece.
Right.
Right.
That's the only question I had.
Okay, I asked Ms. Green before the meeting, why did we, act on the docket of claim, now instead of at the first of the month, but she had a good explanation. She said that fiscal year is closing out Friday, and we want to get the bills paid. So.
Okay.
It's less journal entries. We're going to have to make them in July, too.
Any other discussion on the items?
Is that the main reason we have a special call board meeting at the end of June? Is it typical that we always do a special call board meeting at this time?
We did last year also. It has, really the main reason is setting the public hearing.
Yes.
The rest of this, if we had to have waited, we could have waited. So, and since we were going to have to set the public hearing, I just asked Mr. Verdolfich if I could add some of these other items just to help clean up things before the fiscal year ended.
Understood. Thank you.
Sure.
Any other discussion? All in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries 5-0. Item 2C.
Request for approval of removal of equipment inventory and disposal. The equipment listed on the attached memorandum no longer has any useful value to the district. It's recommended the Board of Trustees approve the attached list of equipment as no longer having useful value to the district and approve the removal from inventory, declaring surplus and advertising for sale and disposing is mandated by Section 37-7-455 in this code annotated 1972 unless otherwise ordered by the Board of Trustees.
I've heard the superintendent's recommendation. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Motion to approve by Mr. Irving.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Johnson. Any discussion on that?
It looks like we got about $150,000 worth of Chromebooks that we're getting rid of. And is there any?
We did a one-for-one replacement on those. Those are the oldest Chromebooks that we have in the district. And so with the help of Mr. Adolphich and Ms. Graham, we did have some funds set aside to do a one-for-one replacement. And all of those are the oldest of the old that we have in the district. We have replaced them.
Okay. Is there any chance we can sell any of those Chromebooks, or are we just throwing them away?
We dispose of them. When you go into selling items, your vendors are not going to give you a lot of money, pennies on the dollar. The biggest selling item are going to be Apple, and we don't have a whole lot of Apple stuff.
Any other discussion?
When we dispose of them,
Yes, ma'am.
is that just in the dumpster?
Oh, no.
Okay.
No.
So do we find other people that may benefit from the use of these old
We
Chromebooks?
actually, in fact, the company that we use, Magnolia Data Solutions, will be here tomorrow to pick up disposals. All of our disposals, once they're approved, once y'all approve them and once my department approves them, they go to a building in Goshen Middle School. We wipe everything off. It will take the hard drives out. We take anything that could, that can tie it back to the district. Take all of that off, and then Magnolia Data Solutions will come pick it up for free, and then they will properly dispose of it.
Any other questions? No other discussion, so all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries 5-0. Item 2D.
Summer stipends for special education. PGSD Special Education Department will hold 2 days of training for the new IEP software program. Teachers participating will learn how to utilize software to develop and write IEPs. Diagnostic staff will learn how to utilize programs to develop assessment reports. Staff will sign in on a timesheet and will earn CEUs. Stipends approved FY19 special education budget will be paid 100% from IDEA funds 2610 900 1220 000 171 330. It is recommended that the Board of Trustees approve the attached district staff to be compensated for training during the non-contractual time.
Heard the superintendent's recommendation. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. McNeil to approve.
Second.
Second by Mr. Irvin. Any discussion on the item? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries 5-0. Okay, item 2E.
Summer stipends for special education. Child Fund, see document CFD, is a 12-month per year requirement under the IDEA law. In order to make sure we're in compliance with all timelines and guidelines set forth by MDE, we are utilizing PGSD special education teachers and general education teachers. Staff listed is attached during the July and June 2019. Staff will participate in eligibility meetings, IEP development, and IEP meetings. Eligibilities must be conducted and are met within 60 days. IEPs must be written and met on within 30 days of this meeting. Special education teachers and general education teachers will clock in and out when writing IEPs, holding IEP meetings, and participating in eligibility meetings. The IEP committee must consist of the special education teacher, general education teacher, agency rep, parent, and student when appropriate. CFR 300.321 is attached. Stipends approved in the FY19 special education budget will be paid 100% from IDA funds. 2610 900 1220 000 171 330 is recommended the Board of Trustees approve the attached district staff to be compensated for work performed during non-contractual time.
You've heard the superintendent's recommendation. Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Wilson. Second. Second by Mr. Johnson. Any discussion on the item? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried 5-0. Okay. Now, we have, let's see, I've turned it over. Okay, 2L.
The administration is requesting approval to set public hearing for July 29th at 5:30 p.m.
You say it's set for the 29th?
Yes, at 5:30 p.m.
Isn't that Saturday?
That's on Monday, July 29th.
Oh, July, sorry. Okay, you've heard the superintendent's recommendation for the public hearing date. Do they have any discussions or any, want to change the time, or is everybody agreeable to that?
Yeah. We have to have a quorum, I guess.
Yeah, we would have to have any kind of meeting on that. Everybody okay with that? Okay. Need a motion to approve the July the 29th as the public hearing date.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Johnson,
Second.
seconded by Ms. Wilson. Any discussion on the item?
In our notice of proposed ad valorem tax effort, I don't quite understand some of the, I guess, the numbers in the form and in the worksheet. But, I mean, just to be clear, we're not requesting the taxes are raised, the millage go up.
This is by state statute, the
Right.
wording, regardless, even if you're going down on millage, you still have to say notice of tax increase. So no, there is
Right.
no intention of raising millage or raising taxes.
But I'd like to clarify the point whenever the board is okay with me clarifying.
Okay. Go ahead.
Okay. All right, so we're in a unique situation because Pascagoula does not have a comptroller in place. They have hired a firm out of Gulfport who's going to be doing this, but that person is kind of learning the numbers themselves right now. So we're very unclear about where we're going to be. So as a board, we have to recommend, our personnel and what we're going to pay our personnel for the upcoming year. So what we've done this one time in the past, and this requires cooperation with Pascagoula City Council. We will have to make a request, maybe blindly, as to what we're going to get, not knowing if that will create a millage increase. What we have done in the past is the city has let us know, okay, Wayne, you submitted this number of dollars. This number of dollars is going to generate a 1.25 mil increase. And then our response is, okay, well, we'll pull that out of our fund balance to keep us where we are from a millage standpoint. That will probably require a special call meeting in order for that to occur. It has happened whenever Mayor Blevins was the mayor, where we did have that special call meeting, and we took money out of fund balance to reduce our requests so that we would not have a millage increase. So I just want you guys to understand, because we've gone through the Jackson County tax assessor's office. We have working through the current city manager, assistant city manager, and we're working on that language today with Kelly, because we don't know for sure how many dollars are generated that we're going to have available to us locally in our request. So our request will be a number, and there's potential for the city to come back and say, okay, well, that's going to generate a 1 point something increase in millage. We have the reserve set aside to pay for that. And with that being said, if we're looking at a reduction in numbers for students, that's a consistent pattern, because we continue to hear that there's going to be an increase based on industry. But if we have a reduction in students, and we're going to have to start looking at reducing some faculty size and personnel size. So that's actually what we will do over the course of this entire year, is look at where we can make some cuts from a personnel standpoint in other areas in order to, close that budget down a little bit more. But I'm just letting you know, before we get to there, that's how that will transpire in the event that we make a dollar request, because we have to pay our people in August. And y'all know as well as I do, because we've been through the court case with it, that the timeline doesn't work for having all that in place in a timely manner for us to make those kind of calls. So there will be a request to be able to put our people under contract and pay our people prior to that, and we'll have to know what the board's agreeable to, and that'll probably come up at the July 8th meeting, where we'll have that discussion about that. And it'll be a pretty minimal meeting. I don't think we'll have a lot of items on there, and it's kind of designed that way, and that's why we took care of some things today. So we have a little bit more time to discuss that financial aspect of what we're doing and where we're going. So,
Any questions for Mr. Dobbins?
So we're requesting, I guess, about 1.7 million in addition to our prior year from the ad valorem tax fund. That's what it looked like to me that ad valorem taxes collected last year were $46,806,276, and our request for ad valorem tax for the upcoming year is $48,594,856. And so I guess what I'm hearing is, since we're requesting a $1.7 million increase in ad valorem tax operations, there is a chance, we don't know, there is a chance that it could generate a potential millage increase. our response to that will be,
To pull the money from
we
fund
will,
balance.
okay, we will essentially in-house it. We're not going to require a millage increase.
Right, but
We will make the
that won't
cuts.
be before the city has to declare that, okay, this generates this amount of millage additional to what you currently have. And at that point, we can say, okay, well, the district will cover the additional dollar amount so we can maintain the millage where it is.
And theoretically, Mr. McNeil, for us to have collected more than what we requested, theoretically, there's been an increase in assessment. Because what they thought the millage was going to bring in, it actually brought in more. So theoretically, our assessment has gone up. And if that is how everything falls out, they set the millage correctly to bring in the money that we asked for, and we brought in additional funds, then by us asking this amount based on our collections this year, there shouldn't be a mill increase.
And so where's this, I think you mentioned the special fund, or what was
It's our fund balance.
fund balance? Where does that money come from?
That's just our reserve, that, in layman's term, our savings account, it's the
Okay.
money that we have set aside, our rainy day fund, it's called a bunch of different things.
Okay.
And due to the not knowing specifically how dollars were going to roll in or whether there would be obsolescence amounts that were greater than normal, we've actually adjusted that to increase the amount that we hold in fund balance so we can counterbalance that. But after this year, we should be able to look at a trend as to where it's going and then say, okay, well, next year we've got to cut X number of dollars out of our existing budget. We've got to trim some of the area. The other thing is you have those two major roofing projects that we're doing from a capital standpoint. After those are completed, then every project starts to decrease from there out. Those are the major projects that are left on our books to take care of.
Do y'all know roughly how much we have in our fund balance?
Yeah, I can't spit it out right now, but it's in the financial statements every month. There's the report that's landscape.
Yeah.
If you look at district maintenance, the very first fund, 1120, it has every month what our projected fund balance at the year end is going to be.
Okay. But it's in the millions.
It's in
Oh, yes,
the
yes.
15 to 17 million range.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah.
plenty in there to cover an offset.
Correct.
If there would be a potential millage increase. Okay. All right, another question. You mentioned that we may need to consider from a budgeting standpoint reduction in force. Have we done a large-scale reduction in force since the recession, or would this be the first?
What we've done is, for
first
attrition, Ms. Damon has reduced her numbers
Every
at the
year.
elementary school. And then at the secondary level, we're kind of stagnant, but we're about to rework some master schedules because of the way we've adjusted schedules, and we think that we can find some cuts at the secondary level as well. Because personnel is the majority of what we spend money on in the school district. Not to where it would be detrimental. The board in the past has been very rigid about class size and making sure that class sizes are in the 23 to 1 range and elementary 22.
20 to 23, depending on the grade
So
level.
we try to keep our numbers low. Some of our surrounding districts have a lot higher class sizes. But again, that's something we'll weigh after we see how the money comes in this year, if there's something that we need to be concerned about.
Also, Mr. McNeil, on our fund balance, we also use it to pay our bills when we don't have the tax money. In other words, we'd like to have all the tax money come in January the 2nd.
Right.
So we have to,
Yeah.
pay all those bills. And the fund balance throughout the year is pretty low, doesn't it? Right towards the end. It's real. It doesn't
December's
even
kind of,
maybe $500,000. It's real low.
And I've already had a conversation with Frank Porter about this concern, about not having a comptroller, about them hiring an outside firm and all that stuff, and he told me next week he should be able to give me some numbers on it. We have been to the county before, and they've told us, so there's not going to be any adjustment. It looks like it's going to level out. Ms. Grimm was a part of that meeting, and then we come to find out there was a large obsolescence claim that was made by the industries. So that's the unknown, because that doesn't come to us, it goes to the city, and then they've got to disseminate that information out once they get it.
Okay.
And Kelly will also be working with Ron Frederick about, making sure that we commemorate all this in writing, that, hey, we want to work with you to make sure that we don't raise taxes. And if it does look like that we're on a trend where, millage is going to go up, then we're going to cut things beginning this year. We'll start looking at some reductions we can make. And we feel like we can find reductions if we need to.
And the unfortunate piece too is, our fiscal year is July 1 to June 30. Well, the rest of the world is October 1 to September 30. And so the city and the county, their deadlines are past ours. So when we're having to make decisions, recommendations, you having to approve some of this stuff, we're still working on, preliminary numbers because the supervisors have not had to approve their roles yet because they have not. So that's the other piece that kind of makes you a little uneasy just because we're always dealing with, and for some of you have been on the board, and that's why we would wait a little bit later because then we had more solid numbers. But us having to do it prior to August 15th, we're not going to have clear numbers, so we're just going to have to use.
And the last point on that, guys, is that's why it's so important that we are fairly tough about in lieu agreements and things like that. And the fact that we no longer have the control of that, the Board of Supervisors now controls that for any property outside of within the county, but not within the city limits, that the Board of Supervisors now has the power to make that in lieu agreement, which is something we have not historically done. We've taken the full tax value and then we've reduced taxes accordingly for everybody, rather than having one entity get a reduction. Everybody would benefit from that tax break. But we no longer control that. That's under the Board of Supervisors now. And they've indicated that they will do the 1/3 value. They've already done it at Mississippi Power with the new stack that went up with Jackson County Schools. They got 1/3 of the value of what they could have received for that. So that's another thing to keep in mind, because there are no issues if we are able to continue to get that full tax value and then reduce everyone's taxes.
Any other questions or discussion?
One more question about the budgeting process. Are we going to have some type of meeting, or are we going to know, I guess, more specifics, almost like a pie chart of, our money's going here from the budget, like this much is personnel, this much is retirement. And I know we've already gotten some of that stuff, but is there a meeting where the board provides input on that, or?
Well, the public hearing is when the board president will present information, which is kind of what you're talking about. We'll have, charts on revenue sources, percentage of expenditures in areas. When you say input, our personnel piece is, because we have to contract with teachers in April. So
Right.
that piece is already set. You guys have already approved the non-certified personnel, not the salary schedules, but the actual people. You've already approved those. So personnel-wise, that pretty much is set.
It's done.
Right. Now, again, the salary schedules we haven't talked about because we had talked about doing an increase, but waiting to see what assessment's going to be to make sure, we can afford that, plus some of the other projects and stay in the black.
I guess like for maintenance, for, facility upgrades, those type of things, is that something that goes to the board where we get into the specifics of it, or not?
If the board wants to have an additional meeting before we get to that point, we'll be glad to meet again to discuss anything you want to talk about. That's not an issue. If y'all want to have a special call meeting, if you just want to have 3 board members show up for it, if you want to have an individual meeting, however you guys want to do that to talk about any concerns you have, we'll be glad to meet with you and talk about that.
Because in that first budget work session we had, it did have, projects for next year, projected projects and for next school year. So some of that stuff was included in that presentation. But like Mr. Rodolfich said, we'll be glad to do another one or add additional information, whatever, I know with you guys being new, whatever you would like to do or see, glad to do it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if we need another meeting. I don't really know, like, allocation, how much we allocate to maintenance, how much we allocate to the athletic department, how much do we allocate to this and
Yeah, we
this.
can give you all that information.
I just
Sorry,
don't, from a more definitive specifics, all I know is very big picture, X percent to personnel, X percent to retirement, some very broad 5 or 6 categories. I don't know what the specifics are.
Well, it'll be up on the monitor there, and I'll be reading out the stuff as it goes, and, we'll be the audience a chance for questions, if they have any on that. And so there'll be some very specific numbers at that July 29th meeting.
And what I can do too, I will forward you the presentation from last year and let you look at it to see, is that going to satisfy your questions? Or if not, if there's some additional information I need to add to the presentation, I'd be glad to do that too. So I'll send that to you this afternoon.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, we're ready to vote. Any other questions? Okay, all in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries 5-0. Okay, item 2G.
Request for approval, payment of additional contract days. The Board of Trustees recently approved Mr. Ratliner as Assistant Superintendent for the 2019-20 school year. Mr. Ratliner's contract begins July 1st, 2019. In order to ensure smooth transition, Mr. Ratliner has been working in the district since its approval. Because of this additional work, it is recommended that Mr. Ratliner be paid for 3 days at his board-approved daily rate of pay in the amount of $1,455. There are funds available in the district maintenance budget to cover this amount. It's recommended the Board of Trustees approve the payment of $1,455 for 3 additional days to Mr. Ratliner for work completed in the 2018-19 fiscal year.
Okay, that's not $1,455 a day. When I first read it looks like that.
I would like
Right.
to recommend that I go to a different
Right.
position.
You just want that job. All in favor of the motion? Well, not all in favor. Like, we need a motion to approve the superintendent's recommendation. Motion by Ms. Wilson to approve.
Second.
Second by Mr. Johnson. Any discussion on the item? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Hearing none, motion carries 5-0. Now we just need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Wilson to adjourn. Second by Mr. Irving. Any discussion? All in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Motion. Opposed, nay.